Welcome back to Jungle Gap. Recently, in many of my coaching sessions, the topic of being invaded has been quite common. So in today's video, I'm going to be going through a guide on how to never be caught off guard by an invade ever again. We're going to be looking at all the different invade scenarios and not only how to prevent them, but also what your reaction should be if one of them happens to you. What's up everyone, my name is Coach Leo and I'm an ex-pro jungler of 6 years, competing at events such as Worlds a total of 4 times, where I played against the best players across the globe. Now in 2024, I've been coaching hundreds of players to reach their dream rank. So if you've had enough of being the same rank every season and want to finally take action, book your first session and join the Jungle Gap Discord today. Okay, so before we actually go through the 3 main types of invade scenarios, I want to quickly talk about these 3 things, which is essentially what being invaded really comes down to and how to prevent it. So the first thing we want to think about is foresight. So what is the enemy jungler? What's the enemy team comp? Usually, although this can kind of go into some mind games where like a Lilia could invade and you don't expect her to invade because it's a Lilia, but generally speaking, you know, your types of invading junglers are early game strength champions such as Bel'Veth, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, etc. So foresight, the first thing we need to think is, can the enemy jungler invade? Is it likely that he'll invade? This will give us more time to kind of plan about what kind of invades he can do and the prevention steps that we need to take. And then the next thing is, these 2 things kind of go hand in hand, but it's using trinkets and also communicating to our team of where we want those wards to be and where we want people to stand. And I know this is easier said than done sometimes in solo queue, which I'll also go through, you know, the most or the priority of where to use trinkets. But essentially, it comes down to this, the first of how to prevent being invaded. Now let's move on to the 3 types of invade scenarios. Blue buff start. You know, we've thought the enemy jungle, you know, we've had some foresight. We know he's playing like a Bel'Veth or something. We think it's likely for him to invade. So what should we do in these scenarios? How do we prevent the invade? And what kind of, you know, how do we use our trinket? And what's our reaction if it does happen? So essentially what this invade is the enemy jungle starts Raptors. And he does Raptors straight to your Gromp. You've started blue, you know, you've killed your blue and now you're on the Gromp and he invades you here. And he kills you and he takes your Gromp and he takes your wolves and then like your Nexus kind of explodes. So let's just talk about trinkets first. The 2 types of trinkets that you can place are this one right here. This is probably the best case if you can actually get it. So you need to kind of analyze, you know, what are the enemy champions? You know, if they have a ignite Riven, she could be kind of sitting right here. So you need to also maybe even ping your team to kind of help you here get this ward. But this is the best ward you can have because you can see what he's doing as soon as possible. And remember, the placement of this ward is also very important. It's very important that this ward is placed in a way that's able to see not only the Raptor camp, but also this path. Because sometimes people can play off of this vision and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to like kind of run around here. Or maybe I'm going to take my red and then run to your wolf. So they can also play off of this information. That's kind of like a false sense of security for you. So the placement of this ward is also very, very important. The next kind of ward that you can place, which is obviously a safer ward, that you can basically get every single game, is right here. Because of how the new map is, this basically prevents any type of invade because it just takes too long to go this way. By that time, you know, you've either finished Gromp or, yeah, it's just not as efficient for the enemy jungle to do this. And obviously, obviously going this way, yeah, this way is way too long. So this ward is just super, super OP because of this big wall now. So these are the 2 types of trinkets that you can use for this invade. Now, let's talk about if it actually happens, right? So we have these 2 wards, either one, and we see the enemy jungle start moving. So our reaction should be, right? So we're on blue buff. Okay. We're on the blue buff. And we see the enemy jungle, you know, obviously taking Raptors is quicker than taking blue buff, but we kind of see the enemy jungle. Obviously, if you have this ward, it's much nicer. But your precautionary, you know, how you should be precautionary here is essentially just hold your smite on the blue. And then eventually, because he's done Raptors so quickly, he'll actually show on this ward or this ward by the time that, you know, you'll still be finishing blue. So obviously this is a bit slower for you. But essentially all you do is you hold your smite, you see the enemy jungler coming, you will just path to your wolves. You'll take your wolves, you'll kind of pull them this way. The enemy jungle will walk here, running around looking for you, but you're just going to be pretty much, you're all good. You're over here already, while he's looking here, kind of confused where you are. And by that time, there is a chance that he can try and find you here, but by that time, you just pull the camp this way, you smite it here, and you move to your raptors. And now, the thing about this is that it's very bad for the enemy jungle now, because he's now obviously on your Gromp, so he does get your Gromp, but his pathing is now so inefficient that, like, you're going to be, just because your camps are so linked together now, you know, they're very close, it's very efficient for you to just farm like this. He essentially has to go like this. Now he's looking for your wolves, they're gone. So now he's going back to his red. So he's doing like zigzags around the map, and you're just farming efficiently. So this is how you counter scenario A. Now let's move on to the next scenario, which is level 3 red side to your red side. Okay, so this is a very common one. You know, enemy jungle starts his red, you're starting the blue. You do 3 camps, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're on your red buff. Enemy jungle does 1, 2, 3, runs here, runs around and tries to kill you on your red. You've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you're here. Okay, so this is an interesting one because, you know, if we're afraid of both invades, right? If we're afraid of the Raptor invade and we're afraid of the level 3 invade, it can get a little bit tricky, and this is kind of where you either need your team's help with trinkets and warding. But let's firstly just talk about this invade, and then we'll talk about that some more afterwards. So the way that you want to do this invade is you want to essentially skip your red. So the counter to this invade is actually not using your ward here, not using it here. It's essentially just going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then actually skipping a red and going to Krugs and going 5, and then actually just warding over this bush. Just warding right here while you're doing the Krugs. And basically what's going to happen is enemy jungler is going to do 1, 2, 3, run around here, and by the time you're finished or you're on the Krugs, he's going to show up here. And he's going to be too slow to actually contest you on your Krugs, and you're just going to see him here, and he's just going to be standing here, wasting time. So he's only done 3 camps. You've done basically 5 now. And now this actually gives your team a chance to have, even if you don't have priority, they have this thing called inside track. And generally as well, laners will move a lot easier if the enemy jungler is just on vision. So this is basically checkmate for the enemy jungler if your team can move. And so this is just a super, super OP way that you're farming very efficiently, and the enemy jungler is essentially wasting time. He's a bit confused here. You know, he may even start the red buff here, and then you might just win the 1v1 if you see him use all his spells on it. And yeah, like I said, it's very, very likely that your laners will move. So now let's actually talk about, okay, so he can do both invades. He can do A and B. He can Raptor invade you, and he can also do this invade. So what do we do now? So there's 2 things we can talk about here. Okay, the first one is how we use our trinket. So like I said before, the number 1 priority is this trinket right here. So this trinket in this bush is number 1 priority for prevention. So you always want to this trinket if he can do both. Now let's talk about the first thing that you can do. So again, it's the same thing, 1, 2, 3 into 4. He's going to do 1, 2, 3 into invade you. Now we don't have a trinket, right? So the one thing that you can kind of do here is you can kind of pull the Raptors this way a little bit just to see if you can catch him on the timing where he's walking in. And then if you see him, obviously you do the same thing. You skip, you do Krugs, then he may start your red or be sitting here or whatever. If you have a champion that can kind of check bushes, it's kind of the same thing though. You want to just, you know, your team has inside track as well. The main thing we need to just avoid when we're being invaded is being caught off guard. That's the number 1 basically killer, because if he can actually, you're just trying to prevent the scenario where he is able to, you know, do more damage to you than your team can react. So if he's able to actually get the jump on you here and take you down to very, very kind of like low HP, this is the scenario where your team actually can't help you because you're too low to actually fight back, and they don't want to be chasing this guy around your jungle when you can't actually fight back. So the good thing about pulling the Raptors here and trying to spot him is that it's very common that you can actually watch him on this timing that he actually comes in here. The second thing is, yeah, you still want to take that precautionary measure where you just do Krugs instead, and then, you know, throw some abilities in this bush, be a little bit precautionary, make sure, you know, you have HP. And again, communication and ping your team that like this could be a possible thing. And then eventually, if he's not there, you have to start the red, and it is what it is. Now, the thing that you can actually do here as well is if you're able to communicate your team to actually get this ward for you, then you'll still have your ward for this scenario where you can place it here and do your Krugs while he's just sitting here on your ward. So that's where your communication to your team will come in, and you can say, hey, ward this. You can just ask your mid, ward this, please. And so that's basically everything to know about scenario B. And so lastly, we get to scenario C, which is kind of the most difficult one, just because it kind of relies on your team a little bit. So let's run through scenario C, which is the late invade, which can obviously happen on either side. So let's talk about how we prevent this. So the late invade, what it is essentially is the enemy jungle is invading you level 1 into either of your sides. So he can come in level 1 here, and if you're starting blue, he'll just take all your camps, right? And then you'll run here, you'll get here, you'll be like, well, that sucks, everything's gone. Now he's clearing up here, maybe you're not able to trade here, you don't know which side he's gone for, he could even cross here. Information is very important, right? And information is what's able to make you make a correct decision. Okay, so let's talk about he invades. Obviously, this invade is just, he just takes your camps. So we need to prevent this somehow. And that's where, this happens in high elo, but in low elo, I understand that this is very hard to happen, but this is where kind of like the fan is important. So it's called a fan because you basically just want to block. The top lane should actually stand here. This is basically where you're just blocking every kind of entrance, right, into your jungle. You're just blocking every entrance. So pinging a 5-point can be very, very good to prevent. But if you feel like, the scenario where, the bot lane matchup is very, very volatile and you think there's a chance that like he wants to split the map essentially. So you farm this side and he farms this side. If you think that's a very, very common if you think that's a very possible, if you think it's a possibility, then you need to basically just ask your team to ward here or your mid to stand here and long enough to see them invade. So you just need to tell your team to ward here, right? Just to spot the late invade. You can even just tell your bot lane to ward just simply the buff. Obviously, further out is better, so you can react quicker. But you want to just ward your buff, so you can know, okay, he's done my Raptors, he's done my red. I have to kind of go and take the map. Now, what happens if you don't actually want to split the map? Okay, we're getting into some kind of higher level here. But let's say it's very, very important that you want a path towards bot because you don't want the map to get split. You don't want your bot lane just to get dove and things like that. And this is kind of a heavier topic, the late invades and stuff like that. This is more common in higher elo, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So the first thing is prevention. So we need to know early enough. The earlier, the better. So if we know that they're invading kind of as soon as possible, there's two things that can happen here, right? The enemy team's invading, your team is here, you're kind of like about to start your blue. There's two ways you can do this, okay? Option number 1, you can run here and force them not to be able to split the map, which is basically just warding right here. You want to let them start the buff, and then you want to tell your team, I mean, obviously this is very much to do with your team, so it's very, very hard to understand, which is why this is the hardest thing. But you want to essentially tell your team to let them start the camp and then gank them on the start. Because whenever you start a camp and you get the jump, you always win. So this is the first option. You ward somewhere so you can see them. And then you want to actually just match them here and just kill them. Okay, this is something that many players don't actually think about doing. But obviously, depending on the comps, if they have like an insane level 1, this is going to be very hard. But generally, you actually can fight level 1. You can just fight. They start the buff. They think it's theirs, right? They think, oh, yep, we got it. All good. And then you just come in with your team and you kill them all. Option number 2, which is a bit harder because you're starting the blue buff, which is, they do this invade. You see them on this ward. Everyone is kind of just spread out because no one's really, everyone's no one's really playing the game, right? Bot lane is here. You're starting here. The only other thing that you can really do here is try and fight him after like one of your camps. So you can like fight this, he's on this, and then you run here and you try and gank him on one of these because you know that you kind of know what he's doing because you have this ward, you have this information. Now this one's way more flippy. I like the matching a lot more. The final thing is, you don't want to split the map, but again, you need to think about yourself as well. If you think that this is really super flippy and you don't want to fight it, you do just have to, as soon as you can, so as soon as you know what's happening, you want to go into his jungle as soon as you can, just because you don't want something like 1, 2, and then him crossing to you to happen. So like if you're too slow to actually take his camps, what a lot of, champions like Graves, champions like Bel'Veth, they love to do, they start your red or your Raptors, and then they just simply cross to their red and Raptors, because then they get like, net profit of like 4 camps. So you need to move here as soon as you can. You need to move here instantly. So while he's doing 1, 2, you're doing 1, 2, and then maybe you're able to get 3 while he's kind of like running here, right? You can pull it this way and run out this way. So this is scenario C. Okay, moving on now to red buff start scenarios. This is where you want to start the red buff. So the first thing we have to realize is that, yes, while similar to blue start, there's one less scenario, which is obviously the Raptor Invade. It can't really happen to you on this side. However, I have seen in the past some, Zyras, they can kind of do blue really, really quickly and invade your chickens. But I don't think it's kind of worth, it's not as common, so it's not really worth covering. So there's only 2 scenarios, and although they are very similar scenarios, the details of how you play them are quite different. So let's firstly go through what this invade is. So the level 3 invade on your blue is where the enemy jungle starts red or Raptors. He does 1, 2, 3, and he's running here and he's trying to kill you right here. Where you've done 1, 2, 3, you're on your way to your blue. Maybe you do the wolves, you do wolves, and you either start hitting the blue and he kind of wraps around on you and kills you, or you face check into him and he kills you, right? So this is the scenario. And how do we prevent this scenario? So the first thing we have to understand is that you're always going to start your champion. You always want to run here, either side you're on. Both junglers should always kind of be here guarding. Doesn't matter if you're starting red, doesn't matter if you're starting Raptors. You always want to go here on blue side, and on red side, the jungle always wants to go here and cover. So that's the first thing. And, you always want to try and ping your team to do this kind of 5-point, because you want to get this information. You want every single entrance to kind of be blocked and guarded. So how do we use our trinkets? The first thing is it's kind of the same thing where you want to ward here and you want to ward here. This one's obviously takes priority. If you can get it, you need to think about enemy champions level 1. You need to think about, okay, can my team help me? Am I pinging? You don't want to run in here and you run into a Darius and just die. So this ward is obviously priority. This ward is the one where, it's less, it's a bit worse, but it's still obviously good. The main point here is we're trying to get information on if he's going to go for it or not. And the important thing to realize that the difference between the blue start and the red start is that these wards need to be placed a little bit later. Now, even if you start blue, you should still look to place these wards as late as possible because it gives you the most information. Now, wards last 90 seconds. And if the enemy jungle does 1, 2, 3, usually he finishes clear around, 2... He'll be on Raptors at like 2:15. He kind of finishes it on average. Most junglers between 2:30 to 2:45, right? So you need this ward to last until 2:30 or 2:45. Sorry, these wards. You need them to last as long as possible, which means that for them to last until 2:45, you kind of need to place them around 1:10, 1:15. And now this is no problem. You can place this ward at 1:15 and still make it here. The main point is that you want information as early as possible so you can kind of decide what you want to do. Okay, so let's talk about the actual reaction now if it does happen, okay? So let's say we have these wards, we see the enemy jungle, he's going for it, we see him going, we'll be around finishing the same thing as him, right? So we're here. Now, the 2 options we have, okay, when we have these 2 wards, is can we actually match him? Can we actually fight him here? Is it such a power difference where we actually can't even fight him even if he starts the blue? Or should we, so in that case, if the power difference is too much, you can just decide here to, okay, I'll go take your camps. You take my camps, I take your camps. This is good for me. You're playing Bel'Veth, I'm playing Lilia. I get to farm, and you are, we all know where you are, and I'm just like, I'm avoiding you, which is good for me, right? That's the 2 different identities. Now, if you are playing a champion that I can actually fight, the difference here is that we both have red buff. So now it just comes down to it's like a standoff, right? Except the only difference here is that your team knows what's happening. Okay, so this is also where some communication and some team comes in. You know, you can make that. You need to make that decision as soon as you see, can we actually match this? Does it actually look good? And this is also where this thing called inside track comes in again. Your mid will always move here, even if he's like getting pushed in. Your mid can technically move first, and also your top lane can technically move first. So, you know, let's just say we want to fight it. Okay, we run here. We can actually just do the wolves as well. And while we're doing wolves, you know, then we can kind of walk around here and see if he's actually on either of these camps, right? And if he's on one of them, we just win. And we ping our team and we go, 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 go. He's here, right? Your team will also be preemptively moving. This is the great thing about seeing someone on vision, is that your laners are much more likely to move, okay? So we do wolves anyway, and then we kind of walk around this way. We're kind of looking for him, right? We have to look for him. We have to check. We can't just start this. We need to kind of like check where he is, because we know he's here somewhere. We see him. So he's either hiding in this bush, he's either hiding in this bush, he's either hiding in this bush, and he's waiting for us to start it. Now, if you're kind of lower elo, people will just be like, come here, and they'll be like, okay, where is this guy? Okay, I'm just going to start his buff. In that case, it's the best scenario. You just go in there and kill him. But if it's a standoff, right? If both junglers are just like, you know, let's just say you're here and he's here, this is always better for you. But it will come down to whichever team kind of comes first, and whichever jungler starts the buff, which this is obviously very specific scenarios. I can't go through them. And the last thing for scenario A is, you know, this is also where it comes to you communicating to a team. The best case scenario for you really is if your mid is actually able to place this ward for you, right? This is the best case scenario. If he's able to place one of these wards for you to cover you, that's perfect, right? Because if you see the enemy jungle actually invade you here, you now actually have a ward, and that ward is going to be really, really huge for you to not kind of get invaded. So let's talk about this scenario where your team wards for you here. Your mid most likely is going to ward for you here, and you still have your trinket, right? So you're still going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Enemy jungle is going to do 1, 2, 3 and look to invade. By the time he's here, you're going to be kind of like getting ready to go on your wolves. And after your wolves here, all you're going to do is you're going to run in this way, and you're either going to ward this bush, right? So you're either going to drop your trinket here or here. Now, I think dropping your trinket right here on the blue is better. And then same as if you start the blue, you're just going to skip your blue, because remember, whichever jungler starts the camp loses. And you're just going to kind of do your Gromp safely. Now, you can also kind of like, same thing as before, even if you have your trinket, you kind of need to check bushes. But for me, I'm just going to be doing 4, skip, just like you do skip on the other scenario, and start your Gromp here, ward over this wall, ward over here, just use your trinket somewhere defensively, and try and pull the camp towards your ward, right? So if you're going to be using your ward here, you want to pull it this way, because then you're going to see if he's coming in, and you're going to be able to kite the Gromp towards away from him and try and get the smite. Now, if you're going to, if you are going to use your ward in the actual bush here, you want to be obviously pulling the Gromp this way, because then potentially he can invade you from here. So this is essentially the best case scenario, is if your mid can ward for you, and make sure you kind of like tell him, you know, ward at 110, ward at 115. But if not, you know how to do it yourself. So that's pretty much everything for scenario A when you start the red buff. Moving on now to the scenario B, which is level 1 late invade / Raptor Invade. So unlike when you start blue, you know, it's not going to be level 2 enemy junglers starting Raptors and invading you. It's actually going to be level 1. And now obviously depending on what elo you are, this is going to be more common, I think, in high elo. But champions like Kayn, champions like Bel'Veth, they really, really like doing... So what is the invade? The invade is essentially... You're starting red, enemy jungle walks in here at like 120, 125, takes your raptors, kills your raptors obviously before you kill red, and then comes in here level 2, beats you 1v1, pushes you out, smites your red away, and your nexus explodes. So how do we prevent this? Let's talk firstly about trinkets. So we've done our fan out, for example. We fanned out. Mid is here, sup is here. Obviously, okay, I'm going to talk about, you know, if your team doesn't help you. Let's say, just for example, the best thing you can do here is yourself actually is let's just say, you know, we drop our trinket here, All right, so we drop our trinket here at like 115 because he can invade anywhere, right? You can't cover everything. Now, all you're going to do to prevent the late invade is you're just going to walk over here and you're going to cover it yourself. You're just going to stand here until like 125, right? Stand there until 125. You'll either see the enemies start grouping up to invade you late, right? You're going to start seeing this. In that case, we'll talk about that next. But you just want to stand here. You want to stand here and see it happening. And then you can choose to either, okay, let's just get out of here. Let's maybe start my wolves and then go take his camps. Or let's just go straight to his camps, right? Now, let's talk about the other thing here, which is the late invade. All right, we want to prevent the late invade. You know, we don't want the map to get split. It's the same as starting your blue. However, now, you know, let's just say, for example, you see them or you think it's very, very likely that the enemy team can late invade. All you're going to do is you want to just have your team ward here, sit here, whatever, just ping someone help here, okay? And then you see them come in and you're wanting to start red anyway, so you're already in this area. You just, you know, type simply, just say, let them start, something like that. And then your team kind of comes in groups here and starts. If your team is obviously not going to move at all, not help you at all, hey, it is what it is. You got to play for yourself, right? So you just instantly run here, take his camps. Instantly run, take his camps first. You don't want this scenario to happen where he crosses and takes your camps. So you instantly run here and take his camps. If you think your team is just full AFK, right, you always got to play for yourself. So remember, in these scenarios, like you see them, maybe even see them yourself, right? So this kind of sucks. You see them yourself, you have to do everything yourself, and your team doesn't help you. You just got to run here. You got to run, okay, split map. It's not your fault because even if you do have the most crazy volatile bot lane, if no one is going to help, you just still got to play for yourself. So you got to take these camps, you got to take these camps. You got to take these camps first. And that pretty much concludes essentially all the most common invade scenarios. That's going to conclude this video here. If you made it to the end, good work. You are probably never going to get invaded ever again, unless it's some very weird, maybe flash over the wall, Nunu invade or something like that. But if you like this style of video, leave a comment below. If you'd like to see a video like this on the invader's perspective on how to actually invade and what the details are behind that, just let me know. And I run one-on-one coaching. I run group coaching sessions, all in the links below. And I'll see you guys in the next one.